Our next speaker is Jeongim Mok. And Jeongim was a government official in her home country of South Korea before coming here. She was in the Marine Policy Office at the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries, and then in the Marine Ecology Division, where she'll go when she leaves the program. It's been incredible to see the way that Jeongim has immersed herself in every facet of this program, including the uncomfortable parts, which I suspect there were a few. And it's been really fun to hear about her time in between, during breaks over the holidays, how she has just capitalized on her time here in the States to go visit national parks, go on road trips, and just really make the most of her time here. So it's been a real honor to have you in the program, and it's been a growing experience for us. I know you brought a lot to the cohort, and I hope it's been a growing experience for you as well. So thank you so much, Jeongim. The title of her presentation today is What Happens When You Overlay the Social Cost. Oh, nope, that is not it. Sorry. That is not it. That was a question I was going to ask, actually. The title is Using Blue Carbon as an Incentive for Coastal Conservation, a case study on Korean tidal flats. Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Samantha. And yes, I'm from Korea, so my research focused on Korea. So using blue carbon, I tried to find the hidden value in Korea's tidal flat. And coastal habitats are known to the most productive ecosystems on Earth. According to the recent study, their monetary value is 35 times larger than that of cropland. However, these values have not been recognized well, so many areas have been sacrificed for development. Internationally, coastal habitats have been decreased 25% since 1800s. Korea is far above this number. Since the late 1970s, Korea reclaimed coastal habitats around 40%. The total reclaimed areas are 170,000 hectares. So Korea is ranked third after China and the Netherlands in terms of reclamation scale. These are Korea's tidal flats. They provide a wide range of goods and services. They are fishing ground, which is crucial in maintaining the livelihood of the coastal communities. They are providing habitat and food chain support for marine organisms. They have a function of water purification and climate regulation. They protect coastal areas from storm surges and coastal erosion. In addition, they have tourism and cultural benefits. This picture shows the impact when dike was constructed for land reclamation in Korea. Enormous amount of shellfishes were dead when tidal flat was drained for development. Once tidal flat is drained and reclaimed, its historically stored carbon in the soil is oxidized, and consequently, the carbon dioxide is emitted in the atmosphere. In Korea, the value of carbon stored in tidal flats are little known to the public. This inadequate information affects to the decision makers' choices. So my research focused on identifying the economic value of carbon stored in tidal flats and conducted a cost-benefit analysis when a tidal flat is conserved. Following black carbon and green carbon, this is the age of blue carbon. Blue carbon is internationally known as carbon stored in coastal habitats, such as salt marshes, mangrove forests, and seagrass beds. According to UNEP, ocean stores more carbon than forest, and a large portion of ocean carbon is stored in coastal habitats. Tidal flats provide various ecosystem services. For the development, these ecosystem service values are the opportunity cost. But decision makers often neglected these non-market values. The consequence was massive tidal flat loss, which is the form of market failure. To mitigate this market failure, it is especially important to know the monetary value of the items that can be traded in the market and the receive market values. The awareness of monetary value of blue carbon can help prevent development done without consideration of the real value in tidal flats. To assess the value of blue carbon, it is important to know the amount of carbon stored in tidal flats. The nationwide blue carbon survey in Korea started in 2018. The result of this survey showed the organic carbon stock in tidal flats varies depending on the types of vegetation and soil characteristics. The moist soil can an average of 2.3 times more carbon than sandy soil, and vegetated areas can sequester 1.2 times higher than unvegetated areas. I calculated the total amount of carbon stored in Korea's tidal flats. The nationwide average organic carbon in tidal flats was 58 tons per hectare. If this amount of carbon is oxidized, around 53 million tons of CO2 is emitted into the atmosphere. This accounts for 8% of Korea's annual greenhouse gas emissions, which is a huge amount. So the emission prevention has to be one of the major strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. To estimate the net benefit of tidal flat conservation, I conducted a cost-benefit analysis. As conservation strategies, two things are considered: protected area designation for emission prevention and coastal wetland restoration to increase carbon stocks in the soil. Restoration here refers to the introduction of vegetation in the non-vegetated areas. Costs included the establishment and the management cost of protected areas and the construction cost of wetland restoration. As a benefit, the monetary value of CO2 reduction was calculated, which is the summation of emission avoidance and annual new sequestration. The net present value of blue carbon is calculated using this equation. To estimate the monetary value of blue carbon, the amount of annual CO2 reduction is multiplied by CO2 price first and then discounted back to the present with a discount rate and time horizon. Korean government recommends it for using 4.5% of discount rate, but considering the sensitivity of discount rate, I also used the lower one and higher one as well. I used the 25 years of time horizon because once tidal flat is reclaimed, most stored carbon is emitted within 25 years. For the cost-benefit analysis, I chose the Ganghwa tidal flat. The Ganghwa tidal flat is located at the mouth of Han River, so it has a really high development pressure. According to the 2018 the nationwide survey, its mean organic carbon was 95 tons per hectare. If it is converted to CO2 equivalent, the quantity was estimated at 349 tons per hectare. This number is used for the value estimation of emission prevention. And for the calculation of annual newly valued amount, the annual carbon barrier rate is necessary. But this has not been surveyed yet in Korea, so I used the global average. So this graph shows the result of the analysis. If 10% of Ganghwa tidal flat is restored, the discount rate of 4.5%, the break-even point benefit and cost occurs when the carbon price is in between $4 to $6. If this cost is compared to the annual average carbon market price in 2018 Korea, which is $21 per ton. So it means tidal flat conservation is economically sensible. This graph shows the net benefit when the average market price, carbon market price was applied. The net benefit was estimated around $200 million. So blue carbon is economically thumbs up. The value of blue carbon is high enough to incentivize related policies. blue carbon can be used a wide range of conservation policies. Available policies are tidal flood conservation and coastal wetland restoration, coastal management and coastal maintenance projects as well. If these policies are implemented, we can receive a co-benefit of climate change mitigation. So legislative improvements are required to reflect blue carbon in the policies. I suggest some improvements to allow the following 4 principles. First, designate protected areas in areas where the carbon is stored in large amounts. And second, Korean government impose and collect marine ecosystem conservation levy from large scale of coastal development projects. This fund of levy needs to be made available for financing of coastal wetland restoration. Third, set basic principle to include the wetland restoration in coastal maintenance projects. Fourth, include the valuation of blue carbon in the major decision-making process, such as the EIA, Environmental Impact Assessment. And finally, these pictures are Suncheon tidal flood in Korea. It has beautiful scenery through 4 seasons. People come to this wetland to enjoy the colors that change every season. Tidal flood conservation policy can get a wide range of economic benefits from carbon sequestration to tourism. Yes, that's all. And I want to give a special thanks to my capstone advisors, my wonderful capstone chair, John O'Niles, and their squires, Mark Jacobson and Bong-ho Kwon. And I also gratefully thank my mentor, Jessica Gaud, for her very valuable comments on my paper. Thank you. And also give a special thanks to Samantha and Lisa and all of you guys. Any questions? Oh, excuse me.
Oh. What is the next step with your project? What is your next step with your project when you go back to Korea?
I come back to my ministry at the end of June, so I'm not sure. I'm working for my previous department was, I worked for the Marine Ecology Division, which is dealing with the blue carbon, this program. So if I luckily work for that department, our division, I will kind of can use usefully this, yes, to implement the really in the policies. Yeah.
So I was going to ask about the $200 million benefit
Yes.
that you had. Was that for all Korean tidal flats, or what was the
It
metric?
is only for the Ganghwa tidal flats.
Okay, so like what would be the value per hectare or something like that? Can you express it in a value that would that could be translated someplace else?
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
Well, I was wondering what would be the value per hectare, for example, as opposed to the value for a particular tidal flat of some size. Am I making that clear?
I'm sorry.
Well, maybe go back. Could you go back to the
yes.
slide just briefly? So that, let's see, yeah, that one. So that's the net benefit. Let's see, this is that calculated? I'm trying to figure out what that means in terms of the value per some unit of land area.
So for the conservation, as a cost, I put the numbers of the management kind of monitoring fee, monitoring cost, and the wetland construction cost, and also the wetland MPA creation cost, all the costs, and I calculated, and then the CO2, in the tidal flat, the CO2 is a lot of CO2 is sequestrated, and I calculated the net present value of the stored carbon carbons, and then I compared the cost and benefit conducted. And then yes, the result is actually this one.